I was in the bathroom and I just like burst into tears because I was so sad that she was going to be going through that and I didn't know how to help her.
We went to the car and then my mom sat me down and I remember just crying because I didn't know what my life would be like.
Obviously, because I was younger, I didn't really fully grasp the situation when it was happening.
Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's Take a Pain Check episode. We're so excited for something different today because we're celebrating our 100th episode, and I'm so excited to have the Trahans, Natasha and her two siblings, Natalia and Nikhil, joining me today. My name is Brianne and I'm the Director of Operations at Take a Pain Check, and I'll be your host today. As all of you know, Natasha is the Executive Director and founder of the Take a Pain Check Foundation, which she started in 2021 to create a safe community and empower youth with arthritis. Natasha is currently a fourth-year student studying translational molecular medicine at the University of Ottawa. Her sister Natalia is an assistant professor at the Medical University of South Carolina, and her brother Nikhil is a third-year student in the Ivy Business Program at Western University. I will now ask everyone to give a brief introduction about themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Natasha. As Brianne mentioned, my diagnosis is juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which we'll get into. I'm also studying translational and molecular medicine at the University of Ottawa, and my hobbies and passions are singing, research, and podcasting.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia Trahan. As Brianne mentioned, I am an assistant professor at the Medical University of South Carolina. I'm in the James B. Edwards School of Dental Medicine. So I'm an oral medicine professor, and oral medicine is the integration of dentistry and medicine. I'm so excited to be here today.
My name is Nikhil Trahan. Like Brianne mentioned, I'm at Ivy Business School. I'm an HBA1 student studying business administration, and I'm Natasha's brother.
Okay, so to start off today's episode, I'm just going to start with Natasha and her journey. So Natasha, when were you first diagnosed with arthritis? Like, how did you feel when you're going through the diagnosis, and what was the diagnosis?
So I was diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis at the age of 13 in 2016. Initially, I thought that I sprained my fingers. I was playing tennis and my fingers and my wrists were hurting, and then they started to get swollen, so we thought it was a sprain. We wrapped it up, nothing went away, and then I went to the doctor. I got an x-ray done as well as some blood work, and that showed that I had something called the RF factor that was positive, and my blood work showed very high numbers in terms of pointing to a rheumatic disease. And so quickly I was referred to the hospital for sick kids, where then I was given a pediatric rheumatologist. My family and I had no idea what juvenile idiopathic arthritis even was. We were confused. We had no idea that kids could get arthritis, and we thought it was a temporary diagnosis, and hopefully with the medications it would have been cured. But soon we learned that this wasn't the case, and it was something that I would have to live with for life. I was a healthy teenager. I did not eat anything unhealthy. I thought I was doing pretty well in terms of my health, and so when I got that diagnosis, I was so shocked. I was confused, I was really lost, and then to find out that idiopathic means unknown cause, I just didn't know where to start, and my family didn't either.
That must have been really difficult, like knowing that like you've put in all these like preventative measures and you like still got something that's basically incurable. Like I can imagine that was a lot, not just for you, but for your family, right?
Yeah, it was really hard, and I think even socially I found it hard, just in terms of managing my condition, but then also explaining to others what arthritis was. I was in grade 8, so I was in elementary school, and it was just a weird time of my life because I wasn't in high school, but I was like ending elementary. So when I did go to high school, it definitely changed a lot of things.
So can you talk about like the social challenges from going from elementary school to high school and what that was like?
My mom did a lot of research about my condition. I guess she was also pretty desperate in terms of finding answers for me and seeing what medications I should go on. And just when the rheumatologist gave us medication names, we didn't know where to start. And so she did a lot of research, went to Google, which is not the best place to go, but at that point we were really desperate for answers, so that's where we went. We basically found some pain management strategies to help me out, just based off of other people's lived experiences. And so I decided to try some exercises and also diets and lifestyle changes that I implemented. Something that's worked for me is I've become vegan. I changed my lifestyle in that sense that, I eliminated certain foods, and that's really helped me. And I found that socially in elementary school, that was really hard. And I think one moment that's really, really interesting that I'd love to bring up is in grade 8 when I attempted to be vegan. We had like pizza lunch every single week, and Brienne and I were really close friends. Well, Brienne and I were best friends, but we had the pizza. Brienne actually like turned around so she could eat the pizza so I wouldn't feel bad when I was going through implementing if I should be vegan or not. And so just socially that way, you were really supportive in that sense. But I know that it's not the case for so many other people. When I've tried to go out, people would ask me like, why can't you eat with us? Why are you not doing certain activities? And I think that made it really challenging socially. In high school, it was a lot better just because I realized I didn't have to tell everyone. I just could tell certain people and it would be okay. And so I told my close friends and they were really accommodating. But socially, I just find because of my limitations in terms of like activities I can't do and maybe like some things I can't eat, I find it hard sometimes to explain that to other people because they might not understand.
I can understand how that can be challenging, especially when you can't involve yourself as much in certain social situations, activities, like after school programs. Like that must have been really hard to navigate that transition from elementary school to high school. But it's good to hear that it wasn't like a more heightened version of elementary school. It was actually something that was easier to navigate. You mentioned feeling supported by your friends. How did your siblings support you through this period?
So initially when I was diagnosed, my mom told me in the car, and my mom was picking my brother and I up from elementary school, and we went to the car, and then my mom sat me down. My brother was in the back, but he's a year younger than me, so I think he was as lost as I was. But she just sat us down in the car and told me like I have something called juvenile idiopathic arthritis, and I remember just crying because I didn't know what my life would be like. And I think at that point my brother didn't know, so I feel like didn't really have anything to say because I had nothing to say as well. In terms of like supporting me initially when I was diagnosed, I know my sister helped my mom a lot in terms of researching things and just learning more about the condition. And so she helped me in that sense where she was learning about the condition more than I learned about it at that time. In terms of my brother, I guess he was just going on with his day-to-day life because he didn't really know what was happening. But over time, like, it's definitely changed, and I know we'll get into that. But initially, I was as clueless as he was about my arthritis.
Yeah, especially at such a young age. That's probably like 13 or 14 for the both of you. So, like, just hearing those words, you don't really know what to think other than, this is going to be a new life. So Natalia and Nikhil, how did you react when Natasha was first diagnosed, and how did it change the family dynamic? Natalia, let's start with you, and then Nikhil, you can follow.
Yeah, so I wasn't in the car when I was initially told or part of that initial diagnosis. I actually don't fully remember how I was told, but I know I was told later. And I remember I'm 7 years older than Natasha and then 8 years older than Nikhil. So I was 20 at this time. So I had a little bit more understanding of these kind of conditions. Still, I didn't know that younger people could get arthritis. There was nothing in our family that we knew of. So I started researching it right away. At that time, it was more Googling and looking into it. So I started researching it, and then I realized what it meant. And I just remember calling my best friend in the bathroom and crying because I didn't know like how my younger sister would be going through that at that time and then how to cope with that. So I just remember I was in the bathroom and I just like burst into tears because I was so sad that she was going to be going through that and I didn't know how to help her.
I would say that obviously because I was younger, I didn't really fully grasp the situation when it was happening. I think my earliest memories of Natasha, like in our teenage years, was just one point she didn't have arthritis and one point she did. I don't really remember that period of like her getting arthritis. Like I don't really remember that time with her in the car or anything like that. But I do kind of remember a shift, and I would say like the overall like culture in our family, like the climate, and that like we made more conscious efforts when she got diagnosed with arthritis, like our perception of what health was, our perception of how to like take care of yourself, diet, exercise, all of the things. I think there was a huge shift. And it was probably a more gradual one, which is why I didn't really notice that period as much. But yeah, like I think it's even the small things, like when we were growing up, we would have like every Friday pizza nights, where we used to all order pizza. And then obviously, like Natasha mentioned, when she started changing her diet, that stopped happening. So it was those kind of changes that I associate with her diagnosis. But in terms of the specific diagnosis, I don't really recall too much about it.
I think also my mom put us in a group dance class, which changed a lot of things. So it's like Bhangra dancing, which we did as a family. If I was in pain, the instructor would understand, and it was very flexible in that sense. So we all found an activity to do together. So that's also like one change that we made.
So one of the things I remember talking to my parents about was now Natasha's going through this kind of diagnosis journey, right? And we're going to be focusing a lot of attention on her. And I had heard of this syndrome called like glass child syndrome, where when kids get diagnosed with the condition, then the other children in the family tend to get a little bit more like neglected, or they don't feel as part of the family because the focus is on the kid with the medical condition. So I remember going to my parents and telling them, listen, like with this, we can't let Nikhil, or even at this point, me in a way, kind of go unnoticed. And I will say that my parents have absolutely made sure that that's never happened. None of us have ever felt unnoticed just because Natasha was diagnosed, or sometimes she requires additional attention while we were going through this like whole journey. And they've really made sure that each of us have had all the attention that we really required.
That's actually very nice to hear, because I like everyone's in their own life is going through different things, and I can understand why last child syndrome would have some sort of impact on the family dynamic. And it's nice that they like genuinely made like a conscious effort to make sure everyone was still like felt like they had some sort of place, because I know like a medical condition can definitely like take over a lot of their time. So what role did you feel like you played in supporting Natasha through her diagnosis and treatments? Nikhil, you can start, and then Natalia, you can follow.
I would say like towards the beginning, obviously because I was younger, I didn't really grasp the situation like I mentioned. I wasn't as present, and I don't think I was able to offer that direct support because I was still kind of grappling with what this condition meant and how it would affect things. But I think as we kind of grew up together, I saw the impacts it was having on my sister's life. So I was really just there as like a resource and a support. Obviously, my mom and my dad and my other sister were there for her, but I was kind of there to fill in the gaps and needs if needed. So when she struggled with writing, I was there to scribe when she dictated things. So that's one example. Another thing is, I think just in general, I've been there for her if she needs someone to talk to about things. When people kind of have questions, whether that be family, friends, or friends who ask, you know, can Natasha come out here? Can Natasha do that? That was something I was obviously more aware of about her limitations than they might have been. So I was there to kind of advocate for her and explain for her, because I think a big part of a diagnosis is that everyone's constantly asking the same questions, and you feel like you have to answer a million times something that you feel like it shouldn't be that difficult to grasp. So sometimes it can just be a way of support to just be there for that person and explain it for them so they don't have to do it all the time themselves.
Nikhil, I would also say, so I ended up going to dental school in Poland. So I was away for 5 years. So a lot of the support I was giving was more like through FaceTime and on the phone. I saw my family, I visited them and stuff, but I wasn't there like 365 days of the year. I would just kind of see them in winter and summer breaks. So Nikhil, I would say, was more present and was there to kind of give that support because they were so close in age and they kind of grew up together. So when I left for Poland in the fall of 2017, Natasha had just turned 14. So she had only been diagnosed for a year. And then Nikhil kind of provided that support as they were going through their teenage years together. And I came back, Natasha was 19. And so I sort of missed overall that like becoming more comfortable in her arthritis journey, becoming more comfortable with her arthritis in general. But I was able to provide that support through FaceTime primarily and do a lot of like research. I would send articles, I would send links, I would send voice memos of what I had found. But that main supportive journey, I think, and that main support system, Nikhil provided that by being so close in age to her and going through that physically with her.
I think also because we went to different high schools, like my brother and I, in terms of the support that I guess my family provided me, it was mainly like, okay, if I was going through accommodation issues, helping me draft emails or getting the support in terms of like advice of like, what should I do next? And that's where my family was to support me, whether that was on FaceTime or in person. And it was not the direct support of like in school. In school, my parents used to come and help with any sort of problems that would happen. But I guess like in terms of advice of what I should do for accommodations, I would go to my siblings.
So I would say one more thing. Nikhil and Natasha used to go to the same school together. So you guys were always together. And I felt like you were one unit. But then going into high school, you guys had to like become independent.
Which I think Nikhil loved. So
I think it was beneficial to form our own identities.
You're
But I will
actually twins. We're not twins.
You basically were. You're like 18 months apart.
I would just say, like, even when I think back to like Natasha and I both in middle school, I think also our middle school definitely wasn't prepared for accommodating anyone, let alone someone with disabilities. So I think there was a lot of advocating there. We often had to deal with teachers who just didn't have any really respect for students or understand just overall student well-being. So I think at that point, not only was I advocating for like myself, my friends, my peers, I was also advocating for my sister because it was at times just really unfair. And I think that sometimes it's more difficult to be vocal when you have to say, I have these needs, when it might be easier to just say, you know, we as a collective need these things. So I think even back to middle school, I do recall talking to a few teachers or dealing with a few teachers.
Yeah, so you kind of just like talked about the social challenges about like trying to support Natasha. Natalia, did you have any instances where maybe whether that was family, friends, where you had to explain certain things or they would ask maybe inappropriate questions, things like that, where you had to support Natasha maybe when she couldn't or when she first got her diagnosis and she maybe wasn't comfortable like advocating for herself yet?
When you have a sibling with an invisible disability, as people can't see them, so they expect someone to be completely able to do regular activities, and sometimes they're not able to understand why someone can't do it. You're constantly explaining to people and you're constantly reinforcing it. Now, I would say our family friend circle completely get it. And they are like, oh yeah, Natasha has this, so we're just going to do this instead, or we'll do different things, or they don't have to think about it as much. Like Nikhil said, before we were eating almost everything, but some foods did cause a little bit of triggering reactions with Natasha, so we had to change those items. Then we would have those conversations where she would have her own food or she would not be able to eat something, and we all could not either participate in the activity or we would try and find an alternative that we could do.
And my family friends and friends have been super supportive because like their parents go out of the way to like make food that I can eat now. And when I go to their houses, they're always asking like, how's your medication? And how are your joints feeling? I really appreciate when they like ask me things like that. It just shows that they care and they know that it's not cured, it's still there. I mean, we're hoping for the cure, but like they're always making an effort to ask me questions and do things for me and go out of their way to do stuff. And so it's been really nice to have supportive friends. But on the other hand, I do have sometimes people being like, oh, like, let's go skiing when like I can't ski, or like, let's do this when I can't do that. And so it's constantly like having to remind them like, hey, like I can't do that. I think as for patients, it kind of gets frustrating sometimes. So having like other family members also kind of pitch into that has been super helpful.
To be fair, skiing is fun, but it's painful for like everyone. The boots hurt so much when you're wearing them. So not just like with, and especially when you have arthritis. So it's even more of a challenge with them.
Yeah, I was just gonna say in terms of like family and friends, obviously when it first happened, it wasn't that immediate, oh, we know how to deal with it. It has been almost like 7 years now, 8 years since her diagnosis. So it was just kind of that gradual movement of understanding we've gone to this place. So I think, I mean, that is kind of reassuring for other people that are at the beginning of their journeys, that even if people don't understand it right now, you do, and it just kind of becomes a part of life and you don't really think twice about it. And I think it really changes your perspective. Like, I don't think until Natasha's diagnosis and she really was thinking about changing her diet, we started realizing how much like life revolves around food. Like anytime you hang out with people, anytime you like go to someone's house, you want to go to the movies, like everything revolves around food and everything revolves around like mobility and these sorts of things. And I think unless you have that disability, you kind of take these abilities as granted. So it really reframes your perspective, I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a lot of things like socially that revolve around food, and you don't realize it until you're being put into a situation where you can't participate in these things and people start asking questions, and it kind of becomes this like awkward thing where you have to explain yourself, but you might not want to explain yourself because there's just so much judgment for everyone. But it's really nice to see like how everyone's kind of gradually slowly changed over time, and that everyone's like still willing to accommodate, and like you said, like it's become second nature, like you don't have to think twice about it. So how have you seen Natasha's mindset about arthritis change over time as she's grown up, she's learned about it, and she's been able to make all these accommodations? Like, how have you seen her basically grow?
Personally, I've seen her grow from like patient to advocate. I think it's a little more interesting for me because I would say she grew up with arthritis essentially. Her main development stages, which is like the time she's going through puberty, the time she's becoming like a teenager, that was with arthritis. So I feel like her journey just as a person, as an individual, and like developing who she is really intertwined with arthritis. And like sometimes you wonder, like, would she be the same person with arthritis? Because that was kind of her growth journey, but it was kind of like intertwined. So I have seen that from like, but at first when she was diagnosed, she was that kid who was crying in the car at the diagnosis, to now someone who is like wants to support others who are going through that, who wants to raise awareness for issues that not only affect directly her, but others who have gone through similar journeys, others who feel isolated. So I've seen that, but I mean, I think it's like natural to wonder whether this was the arthritis that caused this, or was this just like the natural growth in her life. I think it's all kind of like mixed together.
Wow, so profound. So commonly in South Asian families, there is that kind of thing of if we have a medical illness or some kind of thing going on, we want to hide it or not publicly share it. And our family has never sort of done that with her rheumatic disease. We have been proud of Natasha and everything that she's done, and this was just another part of her. So there was never that hiding that. We've always kind of shared that. But in the beginning, I would say she was not as comfortable sharing her journey, and that's fine. It was a huge life altering moment, and she didn't need to share it. She didn't know how to express it or how to kind of navigate this. Watching her go through these years, and now almost 8 years later, she, as Nikhil said, is an advocate, right? She shares her journey so proudly. So many people know her as Take a Pain Check when they meet her. They'll be like, oh, are you Take a Pain Check? And yes, that's her, because she's been sharing her journey so much. And if I know people that are recently gotten diagnosed, whether it's like, or people who want to talk to someone, I will always share her contact with them because I know she wants to help them, because she knows what it's like to go through something like this. And she wants to just be there for people and help as many people as she can. I'd also like to add, Nicola, just about your question about her trajectory, or like your point. I don't think she would have done this as much. When I remember she wanted to be like a French teacher or a music teacher or something. She had no like aspirations for medicine, but now she is so strongly in the healthcare and medical field, and she just wants to help people through medicine. She still sings and stuff, but it's kind of changed that. And I don't think she would have been the same, but I don't think any of us would have been the same without her arthritis. So I think her arthritis has not just changed her, but changed all of us.
I agree with both of you. I think that definitely the French teacher, music teacher situation of me not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, arthritis has definitely shaped my career path and has showed me what I want to do and how I want to help others. And I know any day now I'd be like, I don't want arthritis. Like, I'd love to not have arthritis, but arthritis has allowed me to meet so many new people, has allowed me to make this 100th episode, and has really just like shaped my life and helped me decide what I want to do with my career path.
I think what you're trying to say is arthritis has shaped you, but also if you didn't have it, then you would still be happy in your journey, but it'd be like a different journey.
Exactly. So no matter what, I think I'm okay.
So, going back to the mindset question, how has your mindset about arthritis changed from like being that 13-year-old to now being 21?
Oh, my mindset has completely shifted. I say it's been a crazy journey in a sense that at first, when I was diagnosed, I didn't want to learn about my condition. I didn't really want to have anything to do with it. I wanted to kind of get rid of it, or I thought it would just be gone, which is not true. I had a lot of thoughts on how I got it. I was like, why me? I was such a good person. I only ate good food. I only did good things. Why do I have arthritis? Why not like the meanest person in the world? It was a lot of blaming people, blaming myself, and pointing fingers. But soon I realized that this is my diagnosis. I'm the one that has to live with it. My siblings and my parents were the ones that were reading about my condition, and I didn't really want to learn about it, but I realized that I'm the one that's going to live with it for the rest of my life, not them. And so I really needed to understand what this diagnosis was and basically become an advocate for myself. In elementary school, my parents were my biggest advocate in any sort of classroom we were in when they had to come and talk to teachers or the school board. And soon I realized that they're not always going to be there to do that. And then in high school, they also helped me out in high school and elementary school. But then in university, I had to become my own advocate. And I decided that after I've built all these skills that I want to advocate for other people. And so in terms of how my mindset has changed, I think exactly how like Nikhil said, from patient to advocate, just kind of being so vulnerable and blaming this arthritis on so many different things and not wanting it, to then accepting it and realizing that I can do so much with my life now that I have this condition, and it's just taking me on a different path.
That's really, really inspirational to hear. And you kind of all like touched on the like how it's like changed the way you approach life, maybe your mindset has changed. How has it influenced the way you approach your respective fields now that you've kind of had this understanding of arthritis and chronic illness in your personal life? We can start with Nikhil again.
Like it was mentioned earlier, I'm currently in business school, but post grad, I do want to go to law school. So between those two fields, I would say like it's very rigorous. So I had an information session the other day with McKinsey, and they talked about what a work week would look like for an associate consulting or a consulting intern. And they were like, if you want a 40-hour work week, there's the door. It doesn't exist. You're going to be working 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Around 6 p.m., you'll get new deliverables for the night. I mean, people talked about, having to take the red eye Sunday and Thursday, coming back Monday, Friday, like that sort of thing. So there really is no work-life balance. And I think that's really great for people who want that. I know that's definitely something that I wouldn't be opposed to for a couple of years of my life, to try new things. But it does make you think about, people with accessibility needs, like this might not be the most feasible things. A lot of people do need that work-life balance, or they want it, which is just as valid, that they want kind of time for themselves. So when I'm thinking about the field that I want to go into, I know that specifically corporate law and corporate business is notorious for not having that work-life balance. So I think a lot about, when I enter these fields, the future, that if I'm a leader in those industries, I want to make sure that it is more accessible. I want to make sure that people don't feel like their disability is a disadvantage.
So healthcare is very similar to business and law in the lack of workplace balance. We tend to have 100-hour weeks, and it can be not very conducive for people who live with disabilities or who want to have a little bit more accessibility as well. In terms of how it's changed my kind of trajectory, it's changed my outcome overall as a healthcare professional, and then again as an assistant professor. So as a healthcare professional, I'm more cognizant of my patients. I am able to recognize rheumatic disease signs a lot more readily than I would have been able to. I'm also able to understand or sympathize with my patients more. There is a little bit more empathy as well going on, that I'm able to kind of relate to them because I know what it's like from Natasha's perspective of going through that. So I want to be as understanding to my patients. And then for my students, I do the same thing. I want to be as accessible of a professor as possible. I want to be able to be accommodating, and I never want any of my students to feel that they are not having their needs met in terms of accessibility, or that I'm blocking their educational journey in any way.
Just my journey in terms of like what I'm experiencing and how that applies to what I'm doing. I think it's allowed me to be more mindful of my peers. I do have classmates that live with disabilities, whether they're invisible or not. I'm able to help them in class and I'm able to support them, whether that is like writing a note to the teacher about how they aren't feeling well, or writing a note to accessibility services on how they might need different accommodations. I've always wanted to help people in every step of the way in terms of accommodations in specifically science and honestly any field, but because we're talking a little bit about science, just helping them with that because I know what it's like. In the lab, I find it challenging to do pipetting or just have certain lab stools that hurt my joints or just like different things like that. And so I've learned what works for me. And then I'm happy to share that with other people. And so that's kind of what I've learned through my diagnosis is what works for me in the school setting, specifically studying science. And then I share that widely, whether that is through my platform or to peers around me.
In addition to, I would say, like in the corporate world, I would also say like one like change for me, I would say is I think advocating for disabilities and disability awareness and empowerment is a huge thing that I now think about when I'm thinking about the legislative and policy side. So one thing is in a few days, I'll be joining my sister and a few other representatives and NPOs at Lobby Day at Parliament to advocate for national pharmacare. So this is something that's really bridged, the field that I'm really interested in, which is like legislation and policy and law with the world that I've kind of seen my sister go through, which is disability awareness, advocacy, and empowerment. So it's definitely reshaped how I think about that. And I think in the future, as I continue to want to make a difference in terms of like equity, diversity, inclusion, disabilities will play a huge part in that.
So seeing Natasha's journey and her struggles inspired me to do a little bit more research in rheumatic diseases and its connection to my field. And with that, I've been able to see so many patients who live with rheumatic diseases that aren't able to either perform their activities of daily living, so they aren't able to sometimes take care of their own oral health care, or their oral health care has suffered because they have a lot of dentists that don't feel comfortable doing dentistry on them. That could be because of physical limitations, or sometimes like if they live with, for example, scleroderma, then they aren't able to open as wide, or even because of the medications they're on and these dentists don't feel as comfortable. What I wanted to do was focus a little bit of my clinical practice and my research about oral health care and rheumatic diseases. And Natasha and I were able to speak at the American College of Rheumatology last year with another one of my colleagues, Dr. Catherine France. And we've kind of continued from there. And now I want to continue creating this kind of medical pathway for patients living with rheumatic diseases to have safe, accessible dental care and oral health care. And I want to do that in my practice. That's one of the things I'm bringing over to my hospital and even in my research too, to continue advocating for.
It's really nice to hear how like everything that you've gone through as a family has shaped the way that you approach your respective fields and the trajectory in which you consider implementing change, and especially like Natalia, like how you were saying about being an accessible teacher, really being able to be there for your students no matter what. And then Nikhil, with like your ability to create change within that workplace environment, within business, within law. And obviously Natasha, like it's completely changed your entire like trajectory for the field that you want to even approach and make that change for the next generation of individuals. So on a lighter note, how do you all interact with each other? Would you say you guys are close? Can you share any memories or highlight any moments in your relationship as siblings?
Yeah, I think we're relatively close. Natasha FaceTimes us every single day, or she FaceTimes me every single day.
Not just me, it's also you FaceTiming me.
Okay, so we FaceTime every day. And if we have a story, you cannot say it with Natasha not being present because you have to repeat it again. So you have to make sure that she's there. Otherwise, you will say that story multiple times till she is there so she can hear it and be part of it. Nikhil, don't you agree?
Seriously? Yeah, that's true.
I also think, like, obviously growing up with Natasha, we were really close in age. I have a different perspective of her. Like, to me, she was always like my really annoying sister that was there my whole life. Like, she was always there. I could never get rid of her. We went
What? Okay.
We went to elementary school together. We took the same bus together. We went to middle school together. So yeah, like high school and university was definitely a breath of fresh air because it was like really independent. Even that, like my sister said, she calls every single day. She feels the need to share every single detail of her life, every story. every story that we share, we have to repeat it. We have to give enough details. She'll always have a million follow-up questions. So I think it's really interesting because I'm sure a lot of people watching will have a different perspective of her than I will and might think she's something that she's definitely not. So yeah.
Okay. I think we're done here.
I wonder how much editing that is.
So I will add one more thing, Nicole. Do you remember every time Natasha was very responsible in elementary school? Nicole used to forget his lunchbox, and she would go and grab his lunchbox and his water bottle, and she would have to sit and remind him for everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the way that my perspective of you both have changed, because you both were like babies, and I was an older sibling, and then you were babies.
You acted like you're like 50.
You were babies, and then now we're like more in the same kind of age range. And in the same like life sort of
Life?
Like
we're all in the same life journey. We're all in our 20s now.
Now we have like just a different relationship overall. Like we're closer. Like our mother says, we're best friends.
Which is gonna make the podcast title "We're Best Friends," like something cringy like that. It's not happening. Anyways.
Best friends forever.
Okay.
Okay, I actually do have friends, so I'm good. But
What inspired you to start a podcast? Like, who were the fundamental people involved in creating this initiative?
So when I was diagnosed with arthritis, I found it really hard for me to find other people living with the same condition as myself. I did a lot of Googling. I Googled kids get arthritis in teens, and really I didn't find anything. I would only find Facebook groups of parents talking about their kids getting arthritis. And then after 2 years, I started to try that again, and I found some forms that I submitted online on some websites, arthritis related, and then I joined a support group where I met other people living with rheumatic diseases. We started having a lot of important discussions on, one, why we didn't meet each other sooner, and two, some topics on arthritis care that we really resonated on, and just we all bonded on the topic of, there's not much awareness about kids getting arthritis. And so my former co-host and I started Take a Pain Check. And from there, my family and friends really supported me through this journey. They helped me brainstorm ideas, really bring this podcast to life. And then I was able to turn it into a foundation.
Why did you decide to expand Take a Pain Check from more than just a podcast?
So in March 2021, that was when I started the podcast. And then over the summer that year, I got a lot of comments and feedback and just interaction from a lot of patients and their families. And a lot of parents mentioned, oh, I want my son or daughter to meet this guest on the podcast, or do you have any support groups you can offer? And then I thought to myself that I definitely want to make this more and grow this initial platform because I am seeing that there is a need. And so from there, I decided to create Take a Pain Check Foundation in October 2021, and actually today is Take a Pain Check Foundation's 3-year anniversary, so happy birthday or happy anniversary. And so it's been a pretty long journey, but I think it's taught me a lot in the sense that I did not know how to run a business, and I've been doing this with, honestly, the help of my friends and my family, and first and foremost, Brienne, who's kind of helped me ever since we started this foundation. The fundamental people that have helped me create Take a Pain Check Foundation and really helped this initiative become what it is today are all thanks to the volunteers, my family, and my friends.
You've mentioned so many ways that you've expanded the foundation. What challenges did you face when it came to the global initiative that you have today?
I think the first main challenge is just not knowing how to run a nonprofit and a business and just jumping right into it really quickly. I didn't realize how much work it would be, but also how quickly it would grow. I didn't expect to go from 5 volunteers to soon 20, then 30, then 50, and also then have the responsibility of getting funding for the nonprofit, having meetings with pharmaceutical companies, going to conferences, speaking, initiatives, marketing, like all these different tasks that I never knew came with a nonprofit. But also, honestly, it's been such a rewarding experience. So all the challenges have taught me something. So whether it was like not knowing how to run an HR team. Like now I've learned how to do that. And typically in a nonprofit, there's a higher turnover rate for volunteers, and I never knew that. So constantly, making sure your volunteers are giving feedback to the organization, checking in with them, like all these different things that I never thought I had to do and were challenges at first of just trying to see, why are they leaving? Or why is this happening? Or can I support them anyway? Oh, they're saying this is so great and this has helped them. Is there anything else I can implement? So all these different challenges and things that have happened has only allowed me to like grow further and improve my skills.
I would also add running the nonprofit is like a full-time job that you're doing while you're still at school. So finding that balance between doing your full-time academics and then full-time school as well, unpaid full-time job is also a big thing. And then, like you said, the amount of growth in 3 years that like people get surprised when we've mentioned that it's only like 2 years old or 3 years old now. Right? It's just grown so fast, so quickly that sometimes it is a little bit difficult to keep up because it's grown too fast. And none of us have had that experience of being able to manage a business like you are doing right now.
I do agree about the full-time job thing. I think if I can just take my laptop and if I had like 9 to 5 work hours and just sit there, I could still be doing Take a Paycheck maybe till like 10 p.m. past the work hours. And I think a lot of our team members can relate too. Like there's just so much to do, so much creativity, so many more things that we can do with this organization that a lot of us get a little bit too passionate, and then like we're constantly doing more things with it, which is also really nice, but also sometimes we need to take a break. And I've also realized that sometimes it can get overwhelming and there is a lot. So it's honestly fine to take some breaks as you need it. Another thing about Take a Paycheck is that because a lot of us live with chronic illnesses, we are very open-minded and always so happy to accommodate people. Oftentimes when you work in volunteer settings or are in different environments, if people don't really understand the lived experience, it makes it hard to first explain what you're going through. And then if you do end up being sick or having a flare-up, they don't really understand. And so just having someone that runs the organization that lives with the condition, I think, at least for the volunteers that I've worked with, they've said like the coordinators that don't even live with arthritis, they've been so understanding just because that's how our environment is at Take a Paycheck. Now I'm just like gassing Take a Paycheck up. But anyways, I'll stop.
Being able to grow with Take a Paycheck throughout these past few years, like I've seen a lot of really, really passionate individuals come into the community and really put their hard work into it, even though we're all not getting paid, but we're doing so much work, so many initiatives, whether it's outreach, it's marketing, like none of us truly has to do this. And it's very fulfilling to see how people with or without arthritis can be in this community and still make such a big impact. Like it's, for me at least, it's very, very inspiring. So where do you see Take a Paycheck to be in the future? So like, how do you envision it growing and expanding throughout the next few years?
Well, I want Take a Paycheck to be the #1 resource for patients all over the world. And so when someone is initially diagnosed, I really want the rheumatologist or the family doctor, whoever it is, to be like, hey, if you need to talk to people living with rheumatic diseases, if you need to listen to a podcast, read a blog, just get some support or information, go to Take a Paycheck. And so I want it to be that #1 resource globally, and we're working on it. I mean, more people have definitely recognized us over the years. Like Natalia said, when I go to conferences, they're like, you're Take a Paycheck, right? It's not even you're Natasha, it's like you're Take a Paycheck. And so like people have been recognizing who we are, and I think it only grows from here. And so that's sort of my goal in terms of what I want it to be. But in addition to that, I want to be able to get more funding to be able to expand on more programs, make more initiatives, and then overall fund research. I think that's a big thing that Take a Paycheck wants to do, although we don't have the capacity right now where it's run by university and high school students. And for people all over the world, our goal is to also give back to the research community to then focus on this youth and young adult population. We also work with a lot of universities and a lot of their community learning courses and support a lot of medical students and law students and honestly any students that are interested in doing like community-based courses to come and volunteer at Take a Paycheck and learn skills. And so that's something I also want to grow.
Take a Paycheck is a very bright future, not only with like the volunteers who are already present, but with the number of people who really, really want to get involved. And as more people gain awareness about arthritis and get their diagnoses, like it sounds like genuinely a very, very supportive community. So, what do you hope listeners, both with and without chronic illnesses, take away from listening to the podcast?
I hope that listeners, whether they have a chronic illness or not, take away a sense of understanding and empathy from the podcast. And so for those living with chronic conditions, I really want them to feel seen and heard, and just know that you're not alone in your journey. For those without chronic illnesses, I really hope that you're able to help us raise awareness about rheumatic diseases, and I want to be able to encourage you to be a supportive ally. And ultimately, my goal is to really just inspire everyone to advocate for themselves and to advocate for others, whether you live with a chronic illness or not, and really just recognize the importance of mental health and celebrate the small victories in our journeys together.
Natalia and Nika, what do you hope that siblings take away from listening to a podcast like Take a Paycheck?
It's all about just like finding ways to support. I would say it's just small things, like just being really intentional. So holding the door for people if you know they have accessibility needs, offering to scribe in class when you get that opportunity. I mean, most of us who are in university get those emails every now and then that says, you know, there's a student in need who has an accessibility need in your class. Do you want to be a scribe? So just those small things where you think that you can make a difference in someone's life. You don't have to have an accessibility need or disability to be a volunteer Take a Paycheck or any other amazing NPOs that we work with. So I would say in that sense, I think that's really important. And then not as much on a high level, I would just say in terms of siblings and family members and loved ones, just know that like, even if it's a difficult journey right now, you're still grasping with it. I think that was, you know, like I said, my journey at the beginning, I didn't really understand what it meant. It doesn't really change things for the worse or anything like that. I think it just changes the way you look at things. It offers new perspectives. So I think Natasha did a really great job of taking that pain and turning it into power. And I think your job as siblings is to support that.
I completely agree. I think my message would be it's okay to feel like lost and confused and just not really know what's going on in the beginning. That's completely okay. Like all of you and your family can be lost and confused together. Just be there for each other. And slowly it just starts to get a little easier because it doesn't make the disease gone. Like it's not gone, it's still there, but you know how to navigate it better and you know how to cope with it better. So as long as you're able to be together and be a family together and support one another, then that really helps you get through it, I would say.
It was really nice to hear your story again and have the perspective of your siblings and how your family and family friends and friends in general had so much involvement, not only in your diagnosis journey, but being able to be very supportive of you from elementary school to high school to now university and building the foundation up from literally top to bottom, having so many global volunteers and growing a passion and a diagnosis to an entire foundation that helps people no matter what stage they're in their diagnosis journey, and whether they are a parent, a friend, a family member. Like it's really, really nice. You guys are really close as siblings and you've been able to help each other along the way.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this special milestone, our 100th episode of the Take a Paycheck podcast. I'm super grateful for all of your support and engagement throughout this journey. It has been a privilege to interview so many researchers, patients, friends, family members who have shared their insights and experiences with us. Thank you to the Take a Paycheck team, who are an asset to the organization, and without you, we would not be here. And I wanted to give a shout out to my best friend Brienne, who has supported me from grade 8 to now. She's been with me through thick and thin and has been a huge part of Take a Paycheck. I also wanted to kind of give a shout out to my siblings for coming on the podcast. It was rough getting them on. Maybe my brother, but just wanted to say thank you to both of you for being able to share your experiences and stories today and for always being there for me. You've both also been an integral part of my Take a Paycheck journey. I also wanted to thank my parents, grandparents, and friends for honestly everyone's unconditional support and love. So excited to continue this journey together to amplify voices and share stories that matter. Here's to many more episodes ahead. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye, everyone. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and all the other YouTube and Spotify things. I've always wanted to say that.